Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to talk about the hidden power of words, specifically the ones we use for the digital world. You see, the language we borrow from the physical world to talk about cyberspace has this huge impact on how we think, act, and defend ourselves online, often in ways we don't even realize.
Now, Edgar Allan Poe definitely wasn't thinking about cybersecurity, but this quote, it's a perfect starting point. The words we use, attack, virus, warfare, they're not just words. They create a mental picture of reality. And that picture has real-world consequences, both good and bad, that we often just overlook.
But of course, not all the words we use are so dramatic. Sometimes they're just simple. You probably remember Senator Ted Stevens' famous description of the internet as a series of tubes. We all had a good chuckle, but it highlights something really fundamental. We naturally reach for simple analogies, for shortcuts, to explain these incredibly complex systems.
And that brings us to the crucial question of this whole explainer. What happens when these simple shortcuts, these mental models we build with our words, are actually misleading? What if they give us a false sense of security, or worse, point us in a completely wrong direction?
So, let's start with our first and maybe the biggest myth of all, the idea that cyberspace is just like a physical place. We talk about it this way all the time without even thinking about it. To make sense of the digital world, we've basically built this mental attic filled with physical things. I mean, think about it. We have digital keys, locks, files, and even Trojan horses. We use these familiar objects to translate abstract concepts into something we feel like we can touch and understand. And here's where it gets really interesting, because this is where the analogy just breaks down. Take the word firewall. A real firewall in a building is designed to do one thing: stop a fire, period. Nothing gets through. But a cyber firewall, its main job is actually to allow specific, approved traffic to pass through. It's a filter, not a solid wall. And that's a huge difference, because thinking of it as an impenetrable wall makes us forget its real job is letting things in, which is exactly how attackers can slip through.
This leads us straight to that classic defend the castle model of security. We imagine our network is this fortress with a strong wall and a moat. But that model only worked back when everyone was physically inside the company building. Today, with remote work, cloud services, mobile devices, that network boundary is gone. There is no single castle to defend anymore.
So, when things go wrong with our physical metaphors, who do we blame? Well, we fall back on another old saying: a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And for decades, the assumption in cybersecurity has been that the human user is that link. But that's not just unfair, it's plain wrong. As researchers pointed out all the way back in 1999, users aren't the enemy. When we blame someone for clicking a phishing link, we totally ignore the developers, who are also human by the way, who created flawed systems in the first place. Every single link in the chain is human, so every link is potentially weak.
Okay, so our physical metaphors are pretty shaky. But what about when we shift from construction to biology? Our next myth comes straight from the world of medicine.
This language is just everywhere, isn't it? Our computers get infected with a virus, and the solution is good cyber hygiene. Now, this helps us understand the idea of contamination and spread, but it also creates some really dangerous misunderstandings.
And here's the crucial point. Basic hygiene is important, for sure. Using strong passwords and two-factor authentication is kind of like washing your hands. It prevents a lot of common problems, but just like washing your hands won't stop you from getting a really serious complex disease, good cyber hygiene alone is not going to stop a sophisticated targeted attack. It can create a dangerous false sense of security.
And this right here illustrates the biggest flaw in the whole biological analogy. Our bodies have this amazing adaptive immune system that can identify and fight off new invaders it's never seen before. Antivirus software, it can't do that. Fundamentally, it's just a list of known bad things. It is not an immune system, and thinking of it that way makes us expect it to do things it simply wasn't built to do. So that brings us to our final and maybe the most dramatic set of myths, the language of war.
Just turn on the news and you'll hear it. Companies are hit by attacks. Defenders are on the front lines, and nations deploy cyber weapons. This language frames everything as a high-stakes, zero-sum conflict, and it immediately makes us think of physical destruction in combat.
And this leads to these emotionally powerful but really imprecise phrases like a digital Pearl Harbor or a cyber 9/11. These analogies are meant to create a sense of urgency and fear, right? But they don't actually tell us anything useful about the real risks we face. I mean, what would a Cyber 9/11 even look like? The analogy actually obscures more than it clarifies.
This quote from former UK cyber chief Ciaran Martin really helps ground the conversation in reality. For the most part, cyber attacks aren't some single catastrophic explosion. No, they're a constant, low-level drain, a chronic, debilitating problem that just grinds away at systems and economies over time.
And when we compare the weapons, the analogy really falls apart. A bomb or a bullet has a predictable physical and usually permanent effect, but a cyber tool, its effect can be completely different depending on how it's used. The exact same piece of code could be used to delete a file or just spy quietly in the background. The tool is the same. It's the intent that makes it a weapon. And this is so crucial because treating every cyber incident like a bomb has been dropped leads to panic and really flawed policy.
So, if all our old words are broken, what are we supposed to do? How can we talk about these threats more clearly, more effectively? Well, the point isn't that all analogies are bad. They're useful shortcuts. The castle analogy helps us understand layered security, and the virus analogy helps explain how malware spreads. But we have to recognize where they fail. We've got to remember that firewalls are designed to let traffic through, and that our computers don't have an adaptive immune system. So what's a better way to think about it? Maybe, as this suggests, one of the best analogies we have is death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's not about one giant catastrophic wound. It's about the endless, small, draining hits that cause massive damage over time. It captures that chronic, debilitating nature of the real cyber threat.
And that right there is the big takeaway. Words matter. The metaphors we use, they literally shape our reality and our responses. So the next time you hear about a cyber war or a computer virus, just take a second. Ask yourself, what is that mental picture hiding? Because if our old analogies are broken, it's up to all of us to start building a new, more accurate language for our very real digital world.